Hi, I'm Erin Grogan of Love So Modern, and welcome to week 5 of the Circuit and Maven Quilt Along. This week we are going to be talking about strip piecing for our circuit quilt and sewing half square triangles for our Maven quilt. I'm going to be sharing with you my secrets and techniques for strip piecing for success and my easy cheat workaround way for doing half square triangles a little faster and a little easier with my Bloc Loc ruler, but not just using it, but my tricks for using it. So let's go. All right, so we are going to start with our strip piecing for our circuit quilt. Before I start, I like to drop my stitch length down a little bit since we are not back stitching and we are going to be cutting these pieces up. Having a smaller stitch length will help keep from unraveling a little bit. It's not important how well we're lining up on our short edges, but it is very important how well we line up on our long edge. So don't stress too much about the top. But do take the time to get your side lined up well. I don't pin, but you are more than welcome to. So, with my favorite Click Click Close seams tape right here, it helps to guide me and line me up, and I have my 1/4 inch foot on here as well. And again, I'm not going to back stitch. So you can see the way that I guide long strips is I hold the fabric, not tight, but loosely in my right hand, kind of resting between my pointer finger and my middle finger. And I kind of rest that hand up against my table, and that helps it guide through smoothly. And I guide from the top with my left hand, again, gently, not applying a lot of pressure. And it's important to take your time. If you start seeing your fabric on the back side poke through on the side, pause, take a moment to adjust, and reset your fabric. And again, as I get to my end, I'm not going to worry about backstitching. And just like I did last week in piecing our center blocks, I am a huge fan of chain piecing, and I will be chain piecing all of my strips that I need for my circuit block. So again, lining everything up, no backstitching, and go. All right, why don't you go give it a try? All right, now that we are done sewing our strips together, we're going to take them to our iron and press it. When I'm doing strips piece sewing, I like to press my seams open. This will help when we are going to cut because everything will lie really flat. Important when you're pressing to make sure that you press and don't iron because we want these to be going very straight. If you move your iron to the side, you could end up warping and changing the directionality of your fabric. So if you are going to move, make sure you're just moving up and down along the same direction as your seams, but try to just press down. All right, let's get trimming. All right, so now we're going to begin making our strip sets. So I always start by lining up my ruler towards the edge of my strips, and I want to make sure that I'm lining up at both my top and my bottom to make sure everything is straight, and I try to line up my center seam as well. If all of those line up or closely line up, you're good to go. And I start by trimming off this excess. And now we can start cutting off our strip sets. So I line everything up again. It's important to take your time with this step. As you go and start cutting pieces off, it's very easy for your piece to get a little wonky. So take the time to stop, reline everything up, and re-square up your edge as needed. There's enough fabric built in here for you to do that a couple of times, so don't worry about not having enough. And just keep going. All right, so now we are going to move on to our Maven block. So since these are a little bit bigger blocks than my table, I'm going to start by marking down the center. When I'm doing my marking, I like to use a Hera marker, that's H-E-A-R, and I can do a couple at a time this way. So I've lined up my ruler and just gently kind of press down, and that marks my blocks for me. I like this method because it doesn't ruin my fabric, and it does stay there for me as well. I don't have to worry about washing it out, ironing it out. So yeah, so now I'm going to take this over to my sewing table, and I am going to line these up. I'm going to sew 1/4 inch on each side and then bring it right back here to you. Now that we have sewn 1/4 inch on both sides of this line, we can take our ruler, line it up with our center line, and cut right down that line. And this will create 2 half square triangles. Now I'm going to take this over to my iron, and I am going to press towards my darker side fabric. Now that we have pressed our blocks to our dark side, we're going to take our Bloc Loc ruler, and if you press to your dark side, the Bloc Loc logo should be on your light side fabric to be able to sit correctly within the ruler. Now, the way most people would use the Bloc Loc ruler is they would trim one side, lift it up, rotate their block, rotate their ruler, line it up for what you need, and trim again. This definitely works, and if that's what you're comfortable with, you can go for it. But let me show you the way I do it that I find a little easier. So I have my pressed piece. I line up my ruler on my block with my logo on my light background. Now, if this ruler was bigger than my block size, you can definitely slide the ruler up and down. So what I like to do is I get as close to this edge, the first edge that I'm cutting, where there's just about roughly 1/8 or so an inch of excess fabric, and I trim that off. And now, instead of picking everything up, I would slide it down to the size that I wanted to trim it to. So let's say I wanted this at 5.5. I would slide it down to the 5.5 and then come in and trim. But in this case, the Bloc Loc ruler is the exact size that I need. So then, without having to pick anything up, I trim from the back. So what makes this work is instead of rotating my block and my pieces around, instead I'm rotating my body around my cutting mat. So if you find it awkward doing it at the dead center of your mat, some people find it easier doing it at a corner of their mat. It just makes it easier to kind of pivot around your table a little bit. And then I'm not even making large pivots, just a little side step. So let's see that one more time. Trim my little bit in the front, slide to adjust to wherever I need it for my measurement. I pivot my hips a little bit to the right. Now I pivot my hip a little bit to the left. And I have a perfect block. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on strip piecing, subcutting, and half square triangles. Next week we are going to start assembling our blocks and our tops, and it's all going to come together. I can't wait to see yours, so be sure to tag me, Love So Modern, and the hashtag Circuit and Maven Quiltalong so I can see your tops. Till next week, bye.